Uh, there is enough space in the cloud industry right now for to grow that it's not becoming like finding, taking away customers from one to another. Customers themselves have adopted a multi-cloud strategy, so we are not even like, if you sign up a customer, it's not doesn't mean that you're taking revenue away from some other cloud. It basically
Hmm.
means that the customer identified that, uh, having a backup to a backup to a backup, essentially, or having three different clouds in three different regions: Asia,
Hmm.
Africa, I'm just speaking random, North America, could be a valid strategy for them to deploy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth episode of Product Unfiltered. Joining us today, we have Udit Bhatia, a product manager at Google Cloud. Today, Udit will talk about his experience building products in the cloud industry. Udit, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Hi everyone, I'm Udit Bhatia. I'm a product manager at Google Cloud. I work specifically in cloud network security, and this is my currently my fifth year, technically, as a full-time PM. Uh, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Udit. And Udit, we would also love to understand a bit about your background and tell us about your journey, how you came to be a product manager for Google Cloud Network Security Cloud.
Yeah, so I graduated, did my undergrad essentially in computer science engineering back from India in Vellore Institute of Technology, and we had this special program running with back then with Cisco Systems, which was, they'll select a bunch of people in the final year and train them for becoming a network engineer role in Cisco Bangalore itself. So I got selected, and then we had this 1 year of training, certifications, oral exams, everything that we went through. And I joined Cisco as an intern for 6 months, and then as a full time employee. So that started my career into networking uh, as a branch of computer science engineering, essentially. So at Cisco, I was there for 4 years. I was working as a solution design consultant. So I used to break down solutions for fun, and they used to pay me as well to find bugs and basically test it out and uh, find reliability issues. Then I moved on to doing better stuff, which was around designing networks as well. I had a part I played in launching Geo's 4G network as well back in India, uh, designing as well as deployment. Then in 4 years, I used to talk to a lot of salespeople and a lot of product managers. So that's where the sort of the product bug hit me. And this very nice guy who was at Cisco San Jose as a product manager, he gave me some kind of a pathway to become a PM. So he told me like there's two ways. You either do 10 years of marketing, engineering, a lot of different roles, and then you land up as PM, or you do an MBA and you jump shot, parachute into a sort of a PM role. And I went with the other one. Did my join Carnegie Mellon Tepper School of Business in 2018 for my full-time MBA. Did 2 years of that and graduated in 2020 to join Cisco back into their campus enterprise networking team, which in hindsight is basically what cloud does. What cloud is trying to push customers from to basically distributing their setup. For 2 years, I was a hardware PM, working in the B2B business, and when time came last year, Google Cloud came knocking, and I was interviewing, and then made the shift towards Google Cloud last year.
That's amazing. In fact, learning about the journey is so inspiring. Right from doing computer science engineering, understanding about networking, transitioning into product, understanding the product within the company, and ultimately doing an MBA from CMU. Sounds like a perfect journey. But we are really interested to learn about some of the important skills and experience that you have gained throughout this journey, right from transitioning from a CS engineer to networking and from networking to product.
Yeah, so I think there's two major buckets that of skills essentially. One is the technical side, and one is the business side. The technical side, I was an engineer. I picked it up. I was designing networks. I was working on customer solutions, breaking apart network solutions and finding out issues with them. So that muscle got built up over 4 or 5 years working on real life issues with Cisco's customers. And then when I think I found this when you think about PM, you see this three circle sort of a diagram which intersecting between business, UX, and technology. I saw that and I was like, okay, and I think the mantra over there essentially is to cover two of the three specific sites to when you're entering PM. Uh, at that time, I think it was very naive, but in terms of how PM's roles are structured, but I thought of going and basically starting off on the business side of things, and that's where thought of doing an MBA and building out that business muscle. So the MBA essentially gave me fundamentals of understanding how to run a business, what to look out for, how to maintain a healthy business, and how to basically look at each aspect of running your products. So post then, I was lucky enough to get into a role at Cisco where generally the PM role is very across the board. It can shift from very technical to very business. Fortunately, I was in the dead center where I was handling a business as well and also doing the technical side of things. So I was able to work on both of those areas in a real life situation. I think that I then moved out to Google Cloud, which essentially is networking on steroids. So for me, I think those two skills have been interplaying with each other when I look at my career itself. So I'm just building those two skills together every year now.
You rightly mentioned that like getting yourself transformed with the technology is something a PM should always look for. And talking about that, so we have seen COVID coming into the picture, the pandemic completely disrupting the market, where all the companies are moving towards getting digitally transformed. So what all are some of the critical changes you have seen inside Google over the time in terms of how do they interact with their customers, or how do they meet customers' changing requirements?
I think we can take a step back over there in terms of looking at the whole uh, landscape as a whole itself. So when B2B business started, you usually had one building where that one office where everybody used to come and work out from essentially. So you're building a networking solution that addresses that one building, like multiple floors. Everybody needs connectivity to resources that might be hosted on the local LAN. And then you're also maybe looking at internet connectivity to reach out to servers for Outlook or Gmail or some of the other services that you use, right? Now that gets moved on to one building to multiple buildings. You have campuses. You have 4 or 5 building campuses that needs to be coordinated. So your worker essentially can work from one building and go across to the other building, right? While still maintaining connectivity. And that essentially gets got was moving towards more of a hybrid solution where you have workers now sitting at home trying to connect to the office campus networks. Then you have things like VPN essentially coming into the picture. So you had the corporate VPN first, you connect to a building site, you are able to access the network over there, whether it be San Jose or it can be Sydney or the other side. It's up to you, right? What COVID essentially did was provide like a boost to this transition. Suddenly,
Yeah.
you didn't have buildings that you had to worry about. You had to look at millions of endpoints because everyone was working from their home,
Mhm.
right? I even heard about a phenomena that internet speeds in the local areas of the Bay Area essentially were had to be jumped. And they jumped in terms of they had a huge amount of spike in terms of usage because everyone started working from home. So
Mhm.
all those bands need to be upgraded for everyone when it comes to customers, right? So now you have thousands of endpoints, right?
Mhm.
Now the whole job essentially is how do you route this whole traffic to and from where do you bunch it all up into a central headquarter website sort of site where then you take decision of does this traffic go to Outlook, does this traffic go to Gmail that's hosted on some other Google Cloud essentially is like that. And that's where the architectural change came into the being that okay, I don't want to sort of hairpin all of my traffic to go to the headquarters and then basically go to wherever they want to go because that
Mhm.
leads to latency. Then it came to a cloud strategy. So instead of having your multiple sites, you have the cloud and you basically are able to VPN into the cloud tunnels that each of these providers provide
Mhm.
and access the services. That is totally
Mm.
distributed and cloud native now. So instead of having this one data center sitting in the corner of the world where everybody is like accessing, uh, it's now distributed globally and you can access them much more easily, right? So that has been the transition now. Instead
Mhm.
of, I've literally seen architectures where they were bulky machines sitting at the core of it. We used to call them core routers that used to
Mm-hmm.
manage the whole internet. To now, those things getting just replaced by a cloud icon where you have the three cloud providers sitting over there in terms of diagram, and the
Mm-hmm.
company just basically thinking of the solution how to connect to different cloud providers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And any of the customers right now in the cloud space will have a multi-tiered cloud strategy where they're not even accessing one, they're accessing three of them in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it's been essentially in terms of the transition.
So Udit, actually, you explained such a complex problem in such easily, and we were able to understand this complexity with such ease with all the kind of inputs which you shared. But one thing which really I always think about this thing is, as a enthusiastic product manager, and I want to work in a new industry. You had the experience working with Cisco, working with the networking industry beforehand, and so I'm sure that would have helped you in the current role as well. But how important is for a budding product manager to have past experience in that industry and then making an impact for such a complex problem statement?
Yeah, so I completely agree. Like it's a very corner case scenario where you have a good amount of networking experience as well as going into a business side of things as well when running the role of a PM as well. So uh, I don't think so. The technical side is very to enter the PM role is very uh, it's sort of a barrier. Even with if you see interviews for Google as well, there's a technical round, but there are also five other rounds that talk about how you basically will imagine doing building a product and marketing them as well. So the technical side, I think it's at the entry level, you need to understand the surface of things, how things work. I think what every interview in technical interview looks like is how you are gelling with the engineering part. Can
Mm-hmm.
you talk to them? Can you have a conversation? Can you hold a conversation with them essentially, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not building the solution. You will be guiding them, you'll be providing inputs, essentially being a pillar for them to balance their needs on. They will be building the solution. They're the experts. They have been sitting over there. So you're not trying to match your 4-year degree with their 22 years of experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not the job. The job essentially is to make sure that you are providing them with right input so that they can make those critical decisions on going with option A or option B. Uh, and when you're entering, I would say the most important job of being a PM is to love your own product that you're selling. So as much as you can scale up, use the product, be a user yourself, try to deploy the product, try to go through different product cycles of what different things used to be and what you have tried already, what is being worked on essentially. Then you sort of become like a product expert on yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have the right appetite to grow and consume knowledge, then you'll be fine. Like even if you don't have a very vast technical, networking experience as well. So
Mm-hmm.
this is just for entry level. I think for higher levels, they do demand like a good amount of technical background because of the job profile. But at the entry level, there's a bit of a space given to any aspiring PM to scale up and learn the product themselves.
We would also like to understand from you what were some of the key challenges or opportunities which you faced being a enterprise or a B2B product manager. And also, if you can give some light on how does the role differs in terms of being a B2B product manager and being a B2C product manager.
I think for the one unique thing that I've sort of seen at B2B, being a B2B product manager, is that your customers are generally not coming to you for one single product. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, if you're using Garmin, right? You know Garmin for watches. Like you would go and buy a watch, and then they only sell watches. They don't sell outdoor training, everything, equipment, and
Mm-hmm.
everything else, right? Even though the watches are meant to be used for running and everything else. The challenge with B2B is that the customer, when they're coming in, uh, they're not looking to just buy your one product. They're looking to address a problem that will only be addressed by a solution, which is essentially a mix of products working in harmony, in tandem, secure, reliable, and can handle their enterprise needs essentially,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the challenge becomes that's unique from, I guess, B2C also is this is the one first point, which is you solve for a solution rather than a product. So you have to hold like 10 different lines of products moving together towards this one solution that you want to
Mm-hmm.
sell to the customer. Versus in B2C, I would say the overlapping and the cross dependency on, say, an Apple Watch versus an iPhone,
Yeah.
they can still be individual products and they can grow into their own space, and they have much more control in terms of feature wise.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the B2B space, I can just like I have cross dependency across different other things as well, other products as well, so that the customer at the end can maximize each product to get the solution that they want at the end of the day. So we want to become a one-stop shop. You come in, you get everything, you go out, right? B2C
Mm-hmm.
is probably different. The other thing that is is different from running a sort of from B2B or B2C experience is your customers.
Mm-hmm.
B2C, from what I understand, I've never run a B2C product, so just take it with a pinch of salt over there. You try to develop sort of user personas based on a lot of interviews. You
Yeah.
try to find this one person who's a college kid to the other person who's going to a 9 to 5 job. Those are your personas, and then you try to attack which side you want to go to and sort of assign a sort of a market value to each of these user personas essentially.
Mm-hmm.
In the B2B space, it's solving for a bigger company versus solving for a small, medium sized company, which might be a startup as well. Small, medium sized companies usually have simple needs. They have a shorter sales cycles. They are much more easier to sell to because it's the founder that you're talking to usually, versus bigger companies that they have their own benefits, right? Having a logo on your product that this big customer is using my product, you can do a lot of marketing with that.
Mm-hmm.
Number two essentially is that they have a very stable sales cycle that once they commit to it, they don't just turn off into something else,
Yeah.
into some using some other product randomly after 6 months. So they're investing heavily and they're investing huge amount of money into your product as well. So it's a much more stable sort
Mm-hmm.
of business to run with them as well. Number three essentially is also that it requires a lot of experienced sales leaders to work with enterprise customers versus SMB. Like all these is I'm just picking off some of the points from there's this wonderful blog by David Sachs on understanding which is your better customer, enterprise versus SMB for B2B customers, for B2B products. It's a wonderful read. Like we can post the comment, like the link at the bottom. But I think those are the two main things.
So, would you say that in a B2B space, customer acquisition is a difficult task than customer retention?
Uh, I would say depending upon the customer, right? So if you're going with enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
there's a longer sales cycles. There's a longer deal making process, and you require a lot of experienced sales leaders to handle that conversation as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you're bundling your pricing and all of those things, and then you go into your SLA. So it's a very complex deal kind of structure where you spend a lot of time in hiring the right sales staff, as well as dealing with that 6 months of uncertainty that might be
Yeah.
happening or might not be happening, right? So I would say cost of acquisition might be bigger in the first, like you have a higher sunk cost initially.
Mm-hmm.
But once your solutions are selling and then once you have good marketing, then you tend to attract a lot of B2B customers and then they stay on for a longer life cycle. Unless
Mm-hmm.
I think the only time I've seen customers walk away is when they just grow out of the product, that the product is not even addressing their needs,
Addressing things. Yeah.
or they ran into some reliability issue suddenly and the support wasn't great enough for them to stick on or be
Mm-hmm.
happy about it, right? Uh, I think for B2C, uh, yeah, the customer acquisition is like a marketing tool. Like you run
Yeah.
ads, you spend. It's more of a light touch versus B2B, which is heavy on the touch points.
Yeah.
Um, and then the shorter sales cycles, they can walk away anytime you want
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
over there as well.
Yeah. And as you rightly mentioned, I think customer stickiness for the
Yeah,
B2C platform is comparatively fragile when we compare it to B2B platforms. They tend to stick with you for a longer period of time
correct.
unless you end up getting into those reliability issues. And in fact, I'm really curious to understand one more thing. We ran through the complete process of user personas, understanding users in detail. I also wanted to understand the process of adding new features. For example,
Yeah.
in the B2C product, adding more features, the value which you add for a single customer is definitely substantial. But when it comes to a B2B product, the value which you add can be tremendously high. And in that case, user testing, user validation becomes even more important. So how
Yeah.
do you conduct user validation testing and then roll out products in the B2B domain?
Yeah, so I think so in B2B space, the first and foremost way essentially is customers running into some scale issue or some they go into this gray area where the product never existed essentially, and they come back to us like, "Well, can you modify this product into working this?" Right? That's your first line of indication of how do you go about building new features. So they
Mhm.
will raise probably bugs, or they'll raise a ticket essentially with customer support asking for, can you have this feature, or can this product do this kind of stuff, right? I am an urgent need for that. And the job of sales is to basically qualify it in terms of the deal essentially, right? So if it's a big customer, they'll say that, hey, I'm looking to spend about $10 billion in the next 10 years, right? I'm willing to sign this, but I need this stuff, right? That
Hmm.
becomes an important aspect into understanding, prioritizing your features as well. The other part is also looking at, can something else in my portfolio solve this for the customer? And why do
Hmm.
they need it? Do they need it? Do they not need it? Does it work for them? Does it not work for them? Right? I can't just like, if you B2B customers, there's so many different types of networks, especially if you just look at networking itself, there's so many different types of deployments that they can do that you will go basically crazy in terms of if you try to pander to all of them. Uh, what you need to do essentially is come up with a template and try to find out what are the commonalities, if the new feature is important or not, uh, will it differentiate you from the competition as well.
Hmm.
All of this you can do in two ways. You can conduct customer interviews, talk to them, understand their architecture, what's their actual need. Seems things like having a feature that disqualifies one set of providers versus others is unique to you, right? Because it maintains a edge over your competition. So you need to
Hmm.
maintain that edge, right? And B2B customers, they are the most, I think for me, that they have been very helpful because they come up to you not as, hey, I need this. They come up to you and, if you build this, you will get more edge over your competition,
Yeah.
Oh,
right? Not necessarily, I think, in the B2C space where everyone comes up with their own sort of,
Yeah.
I need this, build me this
wow.
thing, or they come in the service as well. But B2B customers are usually very, very tied to the success of the provider as well.
Hmm.
Um, and the second aspect, once you have done your customer interviews, where you tend to reach like a small portion of customers, you also rely on market research tools like Gartner, Forrester. To what these companies do essentially is they work with everyone who provides the solution. They work with customers as well. They have a much wider reach, and they synthesize all of those insights into a report. So you have
Hmm.
these things called Forrester research that comes out every year, talking about different areas of technology and how the players are ranked within it. What are the strengths and weaknesses for it? Gartner comes out with a magic quadrant
Yeah.
themselves. So that's your basically, once you've identified a trend, how do you qualify the trend as well? Like that also becomes a part of it.
Hmm.
So the beauty of Gartner or Forrester essentially is that it's like every one of you is in a different room in the same building and talking about a solution. And there's one person who collects everything, diagnoses, understand the whole metrics and the trends and everything, and publishes a report saying that, this is where the industry is going. And if you're not going in the same way, then it's a good way for you to correct yourself into going to
Yeah.
that. Right.
Yeah.
So, as we understood that, like in B2B space, your customers are not just your customers, but they are more of allies who are supporting you throughout your journey.
Yeah.
So, the one of the biggest fact about cloud industry is that all the tech giants are operating in a very large scale there. Talk about Google or Amazon or Microsoft, all of them have their cloud services. So, how do companies position themselves in such a competitive space where everyone is a leader, and how do you find a market which will suit the needs and you can build something substantial for them?
It's talking to customers who have invested in your solution heavily and are looking for the success. For example, in my case, it will be a success of Google Cloud as well in the products that they're using, and they feel there's a technology edge over there. Uh, there's enough space in the cloud industry right now for to grow that it's not becoming like finding, taking away customers from one to another. Customers themselves have adopted a multi-cloud strategy, so we are not even like, if you sign up a customer, it's not, doesn't mean that you're taking revenue away from some other cloud. It basically
Mhm.
means that the customer identified that, uh, having a backup to a backup to a backup essentially, or having three different clouds in three different regions, Asia,
Mhm.
Africa, I'm just speaking random, North America, could be a valid strategy for them to deploy. Everybody gets to influence the customer on deployment designs.
Mhm.
So we will come up with our designs, and we think that's how things should be solved, and that's how problems should be solved. So everyone has their own school of thoughts, and that's basically what, at the end of the day, the customer has to decide and buy into that school of thought.
Thank you so much, Udit, for sharing all these wonderful insights. In fact, as aspiring product managers, we would like to understand how do you keep yourself updated upon the latest trends and developments happening in the network security and the product management domain. Can you please share some resources or some insights from your end?
Yeah, so I think number one is something that is internal that probably not everyone will have, is access to your customers' deployment designs. So you look at, what are the stable like commonalities now, how customers are deploying stuff onto the cloud as well. So those are the things that basically help me understand like how is my product being used versus what I imagined, and I try to look at the difference. Number two is industry reports
Mhm.
that talk about where the industry as a whole is going and what's happening to the cloud space, where will it go essentially, and what is needed. Uh, this year, I think AI ML has been the buzzwords,
Yeah.
especially post Chat GPT and Google's own launch as well. So those words will keep, I think AI will become like a sort of a north star in a lot of different technologies and different solutions as well. So those are the industry reports, and I think number three is just going through what others are building as well. So
Mhm.
everything is public. Everything is, you have these design documents that are available for every one of those solution providers, and you can go up and just understand how they're deploying it. So
Mhm.
that helps you understand, like, hey, if you're solving a problem, then uh, what would how it's being solved right now, and what are customers using it right now. So what are customers right now using to solve that problem for themselves. So you
Mhm.
understand the whole landscape essentially of what you're trying to replace, what you're trying to customers to move on from also.
Understanding your market landscape is one of the key as a product manager, which you need to understand. So, as we approach towards the end of the podcast, Udit, any advice for our aspiring product managers or product managers who are in different domains planning to shift to the cloud industry? What would you want to share with them?
I would say work on every day when you're, I mean, there's enough guides on books on how to crack into product management. For me, something that has always worked is understanding key industry trends, especially in the area that you're working in or going towards or targeting, essentially. So if you're targeting a cloud PM role, try to understand like what are the trends, what are different trends that basically happening in the cloud industry, what are the pillars, on which the cloud industry was built, a bit of
Mhm.
the background as well. So you can basically understand the pain of being a PM over there. And if you're in an interview, you can always, if you're talking about those same technologies, then you can always relate to the person on the other side of the call,
Mhm.
and talk about similar things, right? And if you don't come in from a very technology background, I would say it helps if you cover one of the three other circles, other two circles as well, which is the business side as well as the UX. I think the third one is design side, I guess.
Mhm.
Uh, so cover one of the two circles. It's mostly around how to build a product, how to sell a product, how to make sure, how to design a product better, essentially, right? So at the core of it, a lot of PM tools are similar, but the
Mhm.
product just underlying product just changes. And the way it changes, then your technology ability, sort of your knowledge changes as well. So today it
Mhm.
might be cloud network security, tomorrow it might be cloud storage, day later it might be cloud compute as well, right? So
Mhm.
you can always adapt the technology part of it, but the underlying tools remain the same. So build those tools that a PM generally uses, and you'll be fine.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Udit, for sharing so many insights with us in today's episode. This officially brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope all our listeners have enjoyed the episode, and thank you so much for tuning into Product Unfiltered. Stay tuned for more such exciting episodes. Thank you.